Welcome everyone to Click Moments, where the right information at the right time is a portal from where you are to where you want to be. And I'm your host, Beth Orr, and I am in Waynesville, which is about 30 minutes outside of Asheville, North Carolina, in the mountains. As you can see, a beautiful spot where I am camping and RVing with friends, playing along the river. And you'll notice that play has been a theme. You might hear the wind coming right now. Nature has been a theme as of late. So today, in this episode, we are talking about nature as a gentle teacher. There is the power in presence. So when you think about some of the best teachers that you've had in your life, when I think about the ones that have been most impactful to me, I didn't even know I was being taught. I had no idea that somebody was trying to impart something to me. And they may or may not have been trying to impart something to me. But there was something about the way that they vulnerably shared their own personal experience. They were sharing a part of themselves just innately for who they are. And because they were doing that, there's no resistance on our part to be able to enter into a receptive place so that we can actually hear what might want to be learned in that space. Oftentimes, in those moments where we have somebody who is a gentle teacher, they may not even have a specific lesson, or maybe they do, and they're so wise about it that we don't even know it's happening. We just know that something in us has shifted, and something that they have said makes sense of an experience that we don't have language for yet. And when I think about nature, I realized in the last few days that nature is actually a teacher. And why I say this is because every single time that I am in nature, I leave different. I'm changed. I'm not the same person I was before. It's like something inside me has shifted. And there's many ways that I can see nature shifting me and teaching me and giving me lessons. And let's just be real. We can take those lessons, we can see them as lessons, or we can see it as a resource. We can see it as something that we're to just interact with, and maybe it's a canvas or a background for play, which has its own value. Just simply playing in nature has a value, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in the different ways that nature teaches us different things. I also want to set this up by saying that it's one of the most powerful teachers that we have. Because one of the things that many of us are, I think, challenged with at this particular time is being present. The benefit of being present is that when we are, we know so many of our own answers. It's just too loud, and the chatter's too loud in our mind, or we're too busy and going from one thing to the next to be able to actually hear our own inner wisdom. We don't have a reflection. It's like, oftentimes we need an input of somebody asking us something for us to self-reflect and to be able to come up with something new, because we're just thinking about things in the way that we think about them. So when we have somebody else say something, then it shifts how we perceive something. But nature is gentle and soft about it. Nature is just like the best listener. They very rarely have anything to say that stops us from being able to enter into the thoughts that we currently have. And sometimes when it tries to get our attention, like right now the wind is picking up, sometimes there's something that it's trying to tell us, that if we shift tact and we shift our focus, it's actually more aligned with what we're trying to do. So I think about how we oftentimes think of things that are powerful in our life or things that are potentially impactful in our life. They have to be, very clear, and they have to be very prescriptive, and it has to have a very clear beginning, middle, and end. It needs to be well thought out, and all of these things are beautiful. I think a good training, I'm in for a good training. I love to learn, but I think sometimes we miss the subtle capacity. And especially when it comes to nature, we know that there are certain ways that it is able to teach us. And when we know that there are certain ways that it can, it becomes a path for us to be able to take that not only helps us learn something, but it also is very reparative. It can help us in so many ways to be able to replenish ourselves, to take care of ourselves, which is something that we're all learning at all times. So let's think about the different ways that we're learning in nature. And I'm excited to talk to you about some realizations that have come to me over the last few days of playing here. And in total transparency, I will say, number one, just looking at the mountains, just looking at these mountains, that in and of itself is play to me. It's rest. And just being able to be here in this space, it makes me want to be more playful when I'm resting. It's like when I have decreased stress, then I start looking for ways that I can play, which then leads me to being on the river here. Tubes and rafts are encouraged. There's a half-a-mile stretch, and it's like, oh, take your time. There's little gentle rapids. There's spaces that you get pulled in just kind of in this circular area to where you can just sit there and have the sun hitting your face. If you have friends, it's conversations, or as my friends, what we did is we tended to just observe, look around, notice the reflection of the sun on the water, and it would hit underneath the trees, and you would see just this movement of like the water, light and water on the underneath sides of the leaves. It was just like a light show that was happening. I actually saw this at Lake Santilla recently. It's a similar kind of experience when the light hits off the water. And it's almost like a bonfire, which also has happened here. It's almost like a bonfire where it gets your attention. There's something mesmerizing about it. And so that leads me to the number one thing, and these are not ranked in any kind of order, but the first thing I'd like to talk about when it comes to ways that nature is a teacher. The first way is it helps us to rest. It helps us because it takes us out of the everyday busyness. When you're at home, what happens? You're looking at all the things that need to be done. You have routines to where you get home and you transition and you turn on the TV, or maybe you start dinner, or you start working with your kids and doing homework. There's something that you're doing that is habitual. And out here, you're out of your habits. You're immediately taken out of all of the temptations of the everyday. And even if you live in nature and you're out in nature routinely, it's still going to take you out of the habits. And what this does, it allows for you to just be. You start to settle into nothingness. It's an invitation to monotask and to slow down, which then, instead of all of these stress hormones releasing, it actually is very reparative. It's almost like sleep or eating or hydration with water. Your body starts to repair itself. You have less chemical reactions. You don't have all these stress hormones going off. And what happens is you start to relax. You have some positive hormones secreted in your brain, which repair some of the damage from all of the stress. This is why we talk about self-care being important. It's very strategic. It is not a luxury unless you think that health is a luxury. And to me, health is an essential state of being. And the stress is actually the anomaly, the incident that if we have our bodies routinely filled up, we're taking care of ourselves, then we're able to handle those episodic moments of stress that come up. And so what being in nature does to us is it is reinforcing the neuro pathway. Every single time you do it, it reinforces the neuro pathway of nature being one of the ways that you can relax. You'll start to go into it sooner, that when you arrive in a place like this, you'll immediately go. You'll take that deep sigh. It'll happen quicker. Your brain will shut off so soon. You'll be like, the more you do this, the easier it is to slip into these states of being. It's like it tells your body that this is what we do when we come out here. We relax, right? So this is a way that you're being taught. You're being taught that you have the ability within you. You have the self-efficacy in order to calm yourself. And some of the ways that you calm yourself is through being in nature. Now, what helps when you're out here is as if you just take it in. I mean, by essence, so trees have an energetic frequency. Just one tree is like 1500 hertz. We at max, at our best, in an enlightened sense, are at 700. And these are measurable energetic frequencies within us. And so if peace is at 600, and enlightenment, which is like this heightened state, is at 700, an average tree is at 1500. An ancient forest, you're going into the 3000s. So no human being that you're in front of could possibly give you the emotional resonance or the ability to match them like trees do. I mean, it actually makes sense of tree huggers, which I know many of you out there are like tree huggers. Like maybe you've been somebody who haven't understood that before. But you know why people are innately hugging trees? Because it has a higher frequency than them. And it actually reduces the stress. Like, think of how many different things that you try to utilize to reduce your stress, that it's maybe you don't understand why it does it, but it just does. Trees do the same thing. It's emitting an energy that we begin matching. We sense it on an invisible energetic plane. And so the more you can tune into that, and it not just be a passing invisible experience, but it's something that you do intentionally, the more it's going to strengthen that neuro pathway to where you just begin to relax. Like, you can see the sun coming out right now, and I'm like, yes, this is spectacular. This is an opportunity for me to take that in and continue to rewire the busyness, rewire the nervous system overreacting. That's something that if we can do that on a daily basis and give ourselves some dosing of this, it will have dramatic impacts to our capacity to manage our own emotional state and to be able to pivot quicker whenever we notice that we're in distress, to be able to get what we need, because we do have the efficacy to do this. The second way that nature is a gentle teacher to us is it actually helps us to problem solve. And I'd like to give you an example of this. I was out on the river yesterday or the day before. That's the way the river works. You have no idea. You start to lose concepts of time because everything gets so slowed that it doesn't even matter. In the past few days, I was out on the river and I was on an inner tube. And what I started to do, I set the intention that instead of being in my head and thinking and trying to chart my course down of when the rapids came, where was the best route so that I didn't go down some really steep paths, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to rest. I'm going to sink into my heart. I am just going to enjoy this. I'm going to receive. I'm going to look for when the light is reflecting off the water, flowers that are in bloom, I'm going to take them in. If there's animals or little critters, I'm going to take them in. I'm just going to look at the colors. Anything that comes up, I'm just going to be present. And so as I was doing this and I was going down the river, so many opportunities started to come up with the water. I started to sense intuitively that the water itself was something that was important for me to pay attention to. And as I went down, there were all of these, like I started to notice how slow the water was going. So instead of looking at this bigger experience, I started looking at the little minute details. And so when I got to this spot where the water was shallow, I got out of my tube and I started to kind of walk around and look at the rocks beneath the water. And I noticed that the water was like this. It was just like, you'd see these over here and you just see these things doing, there's like little streams, these little particles that you could see in it. Now what was interesting is that these particles, some of them have gotten together so much so that it's created like little globs of things. Some of these particles are just floating in the water. But what's happening is that I started to see ourselves, since we're over 70% water. I started to see ourselves, like the river. Our bodies are like, we have the river inside of us. And I have been thinking about how to explain why it's important for us to attach specific emotions to the experience that it's related to. Now this, like trying to explain this and trying to get a visual together, it's really important to me to make concepts accessible, because when we think we understand something and we're like, yeah, like I understand this, but yet we don't bring it into ourselves and we don't have a knowing, and it's something that we have to reach for as a concept versus we just innately know it, then we have to bring that knowledge inside of us when we want to have it be part of our decision making and a filter that we're using versus it's just our filter because we know it innately. So as I'm thinking about this whole concept, it's been rattling around for weeks, maybe a month. I'm looking, now mind you, this is the kind of vague concept that I'm thinking about. And as I'm looking at this water and I'm seeing substances starting to form with several particles attached together, I start to realize this is why it's important to us. This is a really good metaphor. It's when we have individual emotions, when we have individual thoughts, when we have individual beliefs, when we have things that are separate, that aren't attached to what it is that it is attached to, like it's an emotion that came up because of this experience, then what happens is that it stays inside of us loose. We have this fear, we have this confusion, we have this uncertainty, and it's just inside of us. It's just, we don't know what it's attached to. Or maybe we're clumsy with it and we just say, well, maybe it's this or maybe it's that. But until we actually have this particle attaches to this particle, attaches to this particle, and it comes into form, until it's actually a form inside of us, the thoughts and emotions and beliefs are attached to what it is that either we're going to be doing or what has happened in the past, until it's attached together, how could we possibly know if it's something that we want to let go of? How could we possibly know what we're letting go of if we don't know the emotions that are attached to it? So for example, if you have a incident that's happened to you, let's say you were going through a breakup. If you're going through a breakup and you are only able to say, oh, I feel really sad about this, but you don't know the other emotions that you have attached to it, then those emotions are going to be floating around inside you. If you haven't intentionally decided that you want to release it, then you're still owning it and it's still part of you, which means the emotions are part of you, which means that other circumstances in your life for those emotions to attach to you, it's like a magnet. It will be there. If they're underneath the surface, those emotions are going to have circumstances from the external world come within you to attach to that. So when you recognize that you want to let go of, this happened to me, I had this experience happen to me, and I felt these emotions, these words were said, I've reconciled these things. It gives you an opportunity to very ritualistically release it. I was actually here with two friends, and I had a great conversation with a friend of mine about the power of ritual. And they were sharing with me their wisdom on how they processed things that had happened and how it made them feel through writing it down, and then the ritual of actually burning it and releasing it. The intention is, I understand what this has done to me. Here is what this has done. And I am giving it away. I'm releasing it. And it's almost like this. It takes the emotion outside of you. You release it by bringing it out. You think about the emotion, the thought of what this has done brings up something in you. You think about what this has done to you. And then it takes it outside of you, where you ritualistically and almost ceremonially release it for the universe to transmute and do with it what it will. But it's not now in you to continue to attach. Whereas if you hadn't have given it form, if you hadn't have said, oh, this emotion that I'm feeling is linked to this specific incident, which is something that I want to release and let go of. But giving it form allowed for you to release it. As a vague emotion, it could exist with many things. But when it's part of an entity, then you can release it. So you think about this concept, not only can you use it with the past, but that you can also then use it if you've got some feelings bubbling up inside you and you're like, I don't know, I've been thinking about this concept and I've got this emotion. You can start to almost, wow, this tree is interested in participation. I'm leaving this in. This is great. Anyway, it can also help you formulate your future. Because once you start to say this concept and that concept and this concept, and how do these emotions kind of when you bring it into form, how does this then inform my future? Your future comes from your presence. Every single act, like you think of something in the present that you want to do, and then you build a plan and you start acting on it, or you have a next right step that you act on. But it's through thinking about what it is that's coming up for you, which, think about nature. Nature slows everything down. Instead of thinking about all these things that are quite honestly unproductive and unnecessary. I mean, I'm sorry, but the number of times, like in the past, where I've watched an hour of social media and it gave me zero value add. And by the way, I didn't feel calmer. I felt a lot of emotions, but calmer was not one of them, right? So when you think about what you're doing, nature actually says, hey, here, just just right here. What's coming up for you? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? And it's in that slowed space when you start to calm down and take out all the unessential things, or all the things that you don't have to pay attention to right now, that the things that you actually find important and essential will rise to the surface. Your relationships that are meaningful to you, the people that you would like to get closer to, maybe relationships that you need to repair. Things start bubbling up that are actually important to you. It's almost like nature allows you to see what is actually important. So it, in essence, allows for you to be able to be in a frame of mind and an emotional state of being in order to be able to solve or to look at things that are on your heart, because nature is on your heart. Like most of the things that we think about are very conceptual, they're very heady, they're very cognitive. But most of the things that are most important to you, your family, your friends, love, experiencing peace and joy and play and rest, all of these things are really much more heart-oriented. You can plan for them with your head, but you experience them with your heart. And so nature allows for you to sink into your heart, which is a space then that all those things that probably matter most are going to bubble up. As I alluded to a second ago, something else that it does is it also helps you be more present. And you might hear some snorting, and these are my pig friends that have just shown up for Den Den. They have come out into the pasture. I've been watching them go by. Spectacular. So anyway, I got to see that because I wasn't on social media. So this is the segue. There's a presence that happens that allows for you to tune into now. And when you tune into now, and you're not busy or distracted by all these other things that don't matter, it cultivates those neural pathways to where you will want to do that more. When you do have those opportunities to do it, you will lean into that more, because some part of you will start to say, I remember how I felt when I was out there. I remember how I felt when I was on the water. I remember how I felt when I was in the trees. I remember how I felt when I was just looking at the reflection of the water, looking at the leaves. It's funny to me how many times people think that that's boring, or that there's no value to it. But yet we can watch TV and do social media, which could be boring and no purpose to it to some people also. It's just a perspective. And there's nothing wrong with it, as long as it's not taking so much time that it doesn't give you an opportunity to engage in the very activities that you say that you really do want to do, but tend to don't have enough time because of activities that are extremely addictive. One of the things about social media and TV is it distracts us from looking at our life. And at first glance, that's a relief. We think it's decreasing our nervous system and it's causing us to calm down. But the reality is that there's no getting past a situation. It's just kind of maintenance. It's like saying, I'm going to keep things where they are. But yet, there's opportunities when we slow down in nature to not just maintain, but actually to improve our well-being. TV doesn't improve our well-being. Social media doesn't improve our well-being. But nature does. Playing does. Playing absolutely improves our well-being. It puts us in a state of mind. We know what it feels like to be done playing. We know what it feels like to when we have interacted with nature. That is a whole other level of well-being. So I say this, all of this, because you can live however you want. You can do whatever you want to do. And so many times we feel like our lives are so on autopilot. We're so frustrated because we're like, oh, this is what I have to do. This is what I need to do right now. There's no other options. And I would ask, is that true? Is it true that there's no other options? And what happens is that when we're present and we're actually in nature, or we have less things going on, or things are boring, what it really does is it has us confront our own situation of where we are in our life and what we might do differently. It's a lot easier, there's less distress to get distracted versus to have silence and cultivating peace to where the truth of your life will come up. The truth is that you have more agency and time than you allow yourself to realize. I know that's how I felt, is that once you slow down, you suddenly realize, oh, I actually can do something about this. And at first, there may be some slight distress, some discomfort with realizing this. But the thing is that the more you approach your situation firsthand with a mind and body that is calm, which is what nature can do, the more you have the bandwidth to actually ask those challenging questions. What do I want to do with my life? What do I want more of? If I could do anything, what would I do? We can approach those really important questions when we are emotionally at a space where we can handle it. But when we're stressed and we're up here and we've had a busy day and we're like, oh, I need to do something different with my life, that's not the time for your brain to come up with a peaceful answer. But when you're floating on the river, when you're sitting out here listening to the crickets and all the little noises, when you hear the wind in the trees, and your nervous system says, I'm not nervous at all. My frontal lobe and my prefrontal cortex are at peace. I'm able to do some complex problem solving right now, meaning that if I ask myself in this frame of mind, what do I want more of? I'm going to come up with answers that are probably very aligned with my truth. What do I want more of? Maybe your first answer, you don't have to figure it all out, but maybe your first answer is, I want more of this. I want more peace. I want more presence so that I can have my brain activated and be able to hear answers that are more representational of my truth. There's a cacophony right now going on that is absolutely beautiful. It's all around us. And when we enter into that stream, where the wind and the birds and the crickets and all of that is what our typical noise is, it starts to be able to allow all of ourselves, meaning our mind as part of our overall self, mind, body, spirit. It allows for our mind to be fully active. And when we put this calm brain on a complex issue that we would like a solution for, like an answer to something that we're trying to think of, like, how do I explain this? Or what you want to do more of in your life, like you want more joy or you want more peace. You want more activities in nature. Maybe you want a part-time job instead of a full-time job, but you want a part-time job that pays almost as much as a full-time job. Why not? What if it's out there and you've never asked for it? If you've never asked for it, you would never be able to see it. We presume it's impossible, but why? We haven't even put it out into the universe. The universe, when we ask for something, that's when we can see if it's possible. Anything's possible in the universe. So, I say all of this because there are ways to gently train ourselves to learn new things. If you want to have more peace and joy, or you want to have if you have something that you're considering that needs a solution that you have not gotten an answer for yet, I would highly recommend that you start putting that problem on a brain that is calm instead of a brain that is coming off of a busy day. That you allow it, that thing that you're wanting to get beyond, that you allow it to enter into here in your body from a space that is primed and ready and mobilized to be able to answer whatever it is that you have. So, my friends, thank you for being here. I hope you find some place to have presence. I hope you feel the power of that space to calm you. I hope you feel like that you want more nature after you've been out here. I hope you find some place that you feel safe in nature. If for some reason nature is a place that hasn't always felt safe to you, I'd be interested to maybe enter into that with you, to talk about a starting point. Beth@bethor.com. You can reach out to me and talk about that. I've had some friends recently remind me that not everybody's had nature as a safe place. And I would love to talk about where is a gentle spot to start your path of having nature be a place that you find respite and joy and replenishment within, versus be a place that is adversive or that you're fearful of. There's so much power here to help you be the version of you that can answer within you everything that you're trying to figure out. So thank you, my friends. I would like to give a thanks, as always, to Micah McKenzie, who did the incredible cover art for Click Moments. And I want to thank my two friends that I've been here with that have been just incredible. It's always nice to have connectedness, to have amazing conversations, and people who know how to enter into the quiet alongside you. So I hope that you have friends that you can enter into the quiet alongside. And until next time, I hope that you have peace, love, and joy.